In the next few videos, we're going to take a comprehensive look at the cloth tool in 3D Coat's Sculpt workspace. This is a cloth simulation tool that's been in 3D Coat for some time, but it's often overlooked and underappreciated. In the first video, we're going to go over a simple example, and then we're going to begin creating a low polygon mesh for our pants and our shirt for our character. So let's go ahead and get started here by hiding this model. But before I do, I want to just show that anytime you're generating a new object, you'll find it in the object section of the tool panel. If you are on a layer that's in surface mode, indicated by the S icon here, then you will not see the cloth tool. It currently only exists when you have a layer that is in voxel mode selected. So I'll hide this one, and this layer happens to be in voxel mode, indicated by the V icon. Now if I go to the object section and click on cloth, you'll see that we have a basic plane that we can utilize. However, we have other options in the tool options panel to select a mesh, an OBJ file from our hard drive, or a low polygon mesh from the Retopo workspace. I need to mention an important note about this particular option. If you have a number of different Retopo meshes or layers inside the Retopo workspace, 3D Coat is only going to bring in what's visible. So this allows you to isolate what you want to actually bring in and leave behind what you don't. Let's go ahead and get started now by scaling our object up. We'll use this for a tablecloth. Okay, so bring it up a bit. And our basic parameters, if we started with 0, then obviously you have 0 gravity. That means it's just going to float in space. By default, you'll have a value of 1, and your friction might be 0.6. And I'm not sure what the default value is for cloth thickness. It may be something like 5 or 6. Okay, so all we have to do to see the simulation begin is just click Start. And with a gravity value of 1, it's going to be relatively slow. So let me end sim, and I'm going to bump the gravity up to 5, and we'll start again. Now it's much faster. So what you may want to do though is stop the simulation, and for greater accuracy you can slow it down to, let's go with 2. And if you like, you can subdivide. I would be cautious about how many times you subdivide during the simulation process. We can subdivide it before we commit it to a layer. You can leave it in a low polygon state while you're simulating, but then apply subdivision before we commit it to a layer, and you'll see that here in just a moment. Let's click Start again. And if you happen to see any trouble areas, or maybe you just want to add a little bit of randomization, you can always use your brush and just grab a section and tweak it on the fly. Just kind of push it just like you were grabbing the cloth. So let's do that here. It looks like we're in pretty good shape thus far. So let's end the simulation. Let's go ahead and subdivide. One more time. Let's create a new layer here and increase the resolution. I'll name it cloth. Okay, now let's hit enter. So let's pick a cloth texture. We'll go with that for now. Okay, so here is our cloth in 3D Coat. And then we obviously can sculpt on top of this if we like. One nice thing about this is you can quickly store this to reuse with other projects if you like. Let's create a new folder here for cloth. And I'm just going to drag and drop it right into the models palette. I'm going to reduce it down. it's going to decimate it by this value. And we can see our thumbnail here. We can also right click and save as a 3D coat file. Okay, so I can quickly get back to this if I need. I'm going to go ahead and delete this layer, and I will also delete this table layer. Alright, so now we have our little hobbit that we're going to recreate the pants and the shirt. We want to try and do a little bit better job. So I'll unhide all the layers, and what I'll do is I'll select the body layer. If the layer that you want to use as a collision object happens to be in surface mode and you have some live clay work done and you really don't want to have to switch to voxel mode for this purpose, what you can do is you can select that layer, and at the bottom of the Voxtree layer panel you can choose clone and decrease. So it's going to give you a lower resolution voxel version. I'm going to choose this particular object, which is the body object. I've already done that. It's a degraded copy. So I'll hold the Alt key and click on the visibility icon. That's going to hide everything else. Let's now go into the Retopo workspace, and we want to create a pair of pants and also a shirt for this character. So I'll hide this one. There are a couple different ways that we can do it. We can use the strokes tool and turn my symmetry on. And let's go ahead and create a new Retopo layer. I'll double click to name it. So we'll go with a short sleeve shirt here. And what this is doing is it's applying loops that it's going to use to generate the mesh with. And now all I have to do is just create one cross-secting line. This will represent our edge rings. And then our number of segments, this will dictate how many edge rings that we're going to have when it creates this mesh. So I'll hit enter. There we go. We have 12 edge rings. Alright, so I can do the same thing for the chest area here. And I'm going to turn symmetry off temporarily. And right now, when I turn symmetry off, if I don't see that mesh over here, what happens is in the Retopo menu, virtual mirror mode is on. So that means while I was working in symmetry, it was just showing me a preview of what symmetry would do. In this case, we're going to apply symmetry to the other side here momentarily. So let's go ahead and create kind of a tube here. Let me undo. Go to orthographic view by hitting the 5 key on the number pad. Maybe front view. There we go. And I'm going to start my line here. I'm going to hold down the shift key and it's going to create a nice straight line. And I'll bump that up to 16. Hit enter. Let's split rings. So now I'll go to the select tool and let's go to edges mode. I'm going to use my bracket keys to reduce my brush. So I can select an edge, use edge loop, go to a transform tool. I'm going to choose auto fit in local space so that each time I come back to this tool it's automatically going to be oriented along the average of the normals of whatever selection I have. So let's click commit extrusion and it's going to allow me to extrude a group of edges here. And I'll hit the enter key, which does the same thing. So that allows me just to continue extruding on the fly. I don't have to be exact, I just want to get relatively close because we'll use snapping later on to snap the entire mesh. Let me hit escape to drop that tool, and I'll hit escape one more time to drop the selection. Now I can go to the points and faces tool, right click when I see a preview that I like. I can right click and drag over a point to kind of tweak it on the fly. Right click. I don't have to be super accurate with the topology because we're creating a cloth object, and so we could actually use auto retopple for this just fine. In the points and faces tool, this is actually a multifunctioning tool. What we can do is choose a different tool that will be active when we hold down either the control key or the control shift key. So by default, the control key will split rings, and the control shift will add and split on the fly. So I'm going to hold down the control key, and you can see I'm still in points and faces, but it's allowing me to go ahead and use other tools on the fly just by holding the control or control shift key. And I can reassign them if I need later on. Okay. So let me switch that to the quads tool. And in the quads tool, I want to choose direct. So we'll go back to points and faces. And now let's go ahead and hold down control shift. And quickly on the fly, just go back to the points and faces. So right click. Again, control shift. So actually let me undo that particular edge there. I'm going to go ahead and create kind of a nice loop here for the collar. I'm not going to worry about symmetry at the moment. We will clean this up here shortly. Just going to work on one side. Okay, so let's split rings right here for the chest. Use a brush tool. And with auto snap on, as I move things around with my brush, it's automatically going to snap the mesh to the surface. So I think we're good here. Let's go ahead and hit the S key to bring up the symmetry panel, turn symmetry on. And if your mirror snapping is at 0, you definitely want to bring it up to maybe about 30 or 40%. That way it's going to weld within a certain distance from the center line here, or from your symmetry plane, I should say. I'm also going to kind of nudge this down a little bit. Hold the shift key with a brush tool. Allows me to kind of relax things a bit. Let's go ahead and click apply symmetry. So if it does the wrong thing, what we want to do is undo first, and then we can check invert mirror, so it's going to happen to the opposite side. There we go. Okay, so let me push that back down. Hold the shift key. Let's uncheck keep bounds while smoothing. And that way it will smooth the edges as well. I think we're good with the shirt. Now what we want is to create a collar for it. I may apply one more loop. So let's go to the select tool. Let me bring up, for image reference sake, I'm going to go to the Windows menu under pop-ups. Let's go to color palette and I'll put that up here. Go to image. I'll select an image to use for visual reference. So let's go ahead in edges mode. I'm going to select transform tool, commit extrusion. We'll scale that in. Escape and split tool. Escape. I'm going to hover over that edge and I'm going to hit delete. So let's kind of brush this into place here. So split rings. I'm going to stop the video right here and we will pick up in the next one, so stay tuned.